from you ladies. I'll let you guys handle it. I'll be in the audience because I have questions as well, and I want to mingle, so thank you.
Well, ladies, thank you for joining us this morning. We are so excited to have you this. Mother, honestly, it's something that I absolutely love because, as Blessing said, when you're looking into the whole women entrepreneurship and women in careers and, we're looking for our mom tribe, it's not always easy to find because I've been an engineer for 12 years and I've been in corporate America for 14 years and there's not many space for us. As an engineer, I'm in a male-dominated field. I have 40, 50 people in my department, and I'm probably one of a handful of women. And then from there, not many of those women are even moms. So it's so difficult for me to find a group of like-minded women, and that's why I'm so blessed for Blessing and Mother, honestly. And I'm so happy that all of you are here as well, and hopefully we can help you out. So as Blessing mentioned, I work at Ford. I'm also the Vice President of the Arab American Women's Business Council. And then I also have other stuff I do on the side as well. So I know a little bit about balancing and juggling. So ladies, thank you for joining me on the panel today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about what you do and some of your passions.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for having me here, and thanks to you guys for being here. My name is Karen Liska-Evans, and I'm an attorney. And I was full-time in academia for many years at a local university, and I still teach there, and it's amazing. When my son was born in 2012, he's 6, which I can't believe, I went back to work after maternity leave. It was an amazing transition. When my daughter was born, in 2013, because we had a really hard time having the first one, I thought it would be hard for the second one. Nope. And that was just a very different experience. I was with a different boss, a different transition, and my daughter, when she was 5 weeks old, she had meningitis, and she was in the hospital for a week, and there was some residual concerns. And when I came back to work, I was worried, I was burned out, I was exhausted because she didn't sleep. I had a 1.5-year-old. My husband owns his own business, which just doesn't pause. And my workplace at the time didn't really get it. They didn't get what I was bringing back to work with me. And so between that and between teaching entrepreneurship for so many years and always kind of wondering, why am I telling my students to go out and do these amazing things? And I'm coming back here all the time. I made the leap, the hard, difficult leap into entrepreneurship. And brought with me, though, all of that professional experience. And a lot of the time, I felt like that was just my story. Just me, had one experience with returning to work that was great, one experience that was hard, and that was just my own story. But I started speaking to so many professional women and hearing the same stories over and over and over that mirrored mine in a lot of ways. These struggles, these women who wanted to go back to work, they wanted to bring their full passion to bear. The transition back or the company's approach or coworkers' approach or whatever was happening, there was a lot of friction. And they were struggling, and sometimes I heard this because they came to me for entrepreneurship coaching, hoping that I could help them start their own business. Sometimes it just came up in conversation. Being in academia and being an attorney, I researched the heck out of this. Because I was like, wait a second, this is my story, these are some anecdotal stories, but is this a thing? And it turns out around the globe, even in Australia, where they get 12 months of paid leave, you guys, 12 months, their Human Rights Commission had to step into the corporate world in Australia and be like, what is happening here? We're getting human rights complaints about women in the professional workplace and how they're being treated. And they did this full investigation, and they found that managers are confused about how to talk to people. Coworkers feel resentful because this lady just got this vacation that they don't get to take. And the women were feeling unsupported, and the company leaders were like, we're just trying to make our widgets and do our marketing services here. We don't understand all of this. And so out of that was born, with my co-founder Brooke Miller, who owns Honey for Moms in Ferndale, 6 Corporate Parent Experience Consulting, where we help companies through all of this. But through that, I've just worked with a lot of moms and women individually, coaching them through maternity leave and back to work. So I'm really excited to bring anything of that might be of value to you, so that you can continue thriving in the things that you're doing in this world, because your work in this world is incredibly important, and you need to be supported and empowered in doing that.
Thank you for that. It's so important to have that. I know working in corporate America, you don't always get that support, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Emily, and I just quit my job a month ago. So, thank you. I'm a very fresh entrepreneur. I was in corporate America for 10 years. I moved to Chicago originally to get my master's degree, stayed there with my husband. We got married, we had babies. I was initially in the advertising agency that did all the creative work for McDonald's. So I was their first community manager, which at the time I had to look up what that meant. Because brands weren't really on social media at the time when I was entering into the space. And so I really just kind of built it from the ground up. I was literally walking around Chicago. I would buy like 10 cheeseburgers and piece together like one good looking one, and then take photos and write all the copy and do all the posting and read all the comments about why people hated the post that I just posted. And just kind of optimize from there. After about 4 years, I went over to client side, which was a really exciting change because it was really interesting to see the industry change as social media grew, as digital grew in importance for companies. And so I had a team at the agency. At that point in time, I kind of rose through the ranks, and then went client side. I worked for McDonald's digital team for 3 years, I'm sorry. And I headed up all of their social media, all of the agencies that did all the creative work. I got to meet Kanye West backstage at a concert. That's like one of my claims to fame. But I had a lot of really cool experiences because of that role. And simultaneously, I was really kind of scratching that creative end in my day job, but I also had a really big passion for it personally. And so I started a personal blog called Isn't That Charming? I started that at the agency when I was doing all of the community management work and piecing together bad burgers to look good. And I was really interested in personal style and just kind of wellness, relationships. I have a journalism background, so I really wanted to practice writing for myself as well. So I started my blog just with no intent of it other than as a creative outlet. And I've had it now for 5 years. I worked full time while doing blogging at nights, weekends, on the side whenever I could. Kept up with it all throughout having 2 babies. I have a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old. And my family and I moved from Chicago to Detroit 3 months ago. We're moving into a house hopefully soon. It's not ready yet, but we're going to be renting, so that's exciting. And my husband was an entrepreneur throughout all the time that I was working full-time as well. So it was obviously important for me to keep my role as the primary breadwinner of our family. And now kind of we flipped. Now that since we've moved, he has gotten a full-time job. He's still doing his entrepreneur ventures on the side, but now it's kind of, we said, my turn. So I quit my job and I'm diving into creative consulting, and I'm going to be doing my blog full-time, and hopefully it'll take off from there. So that's my kind of background.
That's awesome, and it's very impressive to see. So we'll probably touch on that a little bit more, of moving from corporate to entrepreneurship, because I know that's a big question in our mind is, do we stay in corporate America? Do we move? Do we do something else? So, but before we get into that, I kind of wanted to talk to you about, so I know for myself within corporate America, I've always struggled with where I stood and where I wanted to be and where I wanted to go. So how did you decide what you wanted to do within your corporate world and how to grow from there?
I started by thinking I should do all the things. I should have 3 job titles. I should be on every committee that if the provost of the university asks me to be a committee, of course I will, because it's an honor to be asked. More work means I'm appreciated, right? The problem with that is when you can't do all the more work, or you have to start saying no to things, that appreciation that you sort of built up can sometimes sort of start to dwindle. So that I realized very quickly when I had to force myself into not working 90 bajillion hours a week because these babies apparently needed stuff, like my time and things, that it was really important to find that focus, to define who am I in this organization? Where can I contribute the most so that when I sit across from my boss or my boss's boss or a future potential employer, I can say this is the value that I delivered. And when I was fragmenting myself, it was hard to build that case of the value when I found my focus that I will be on this kind of committee for this reason. I chose entrepreneurship. I will champion entrepreneurship education in this university. So if you want me to be on the sustainability committee, I think sustainability is cool. Yes, go environment, hug all the trees. That's not part of like sort of my mission here. So I think you almost have to develop like a personal mission statement and use that as sort of your lens for deciding what will you take on, where will your focus go, where will your energy flow, so that you can provide the value to your employer and as well as make the case for what the value provided if that's ever necessary.
I would say for me it was a lot of trial and error. I think starting on like the very ground level of where I started, which was very much like an entry level type of position after I completed my master's, I kind of was just trying to get experience in the industry. And I learned through doing just hustling in that job what I was good at, what was working with my skill sets and what wasn't. For example, I wasn't going to be the graphic designer, but I could communicate an idea that I had. Or I wasn't going to be the person that was like the account lead and was kind of organizing every single meeting and kind of tactical detail behind the workings of things, but I could be the person that was going to marry the strategy with the visuals and the artwork of it. And so I just kind of learned where my strengths lied and where my value add was just through that trial and error, which I think just doing it is the most important aspect of that, because really how would you know until you try. I think, when my undergrad was in journalism, my master's degree was in public relations and advertising, and really all that is kind of like a little bit, I don't want to say fluff, but it's kind of an open industry where you're kind of like, I don't really know tactically where to drive this. I could have gone into, a publication and written for them, or, you could go into marketing, which is what I ended up doing. And I think helping to hone in on if your skill set is broad initially, helping to figure out by doing what it is that your passions are and where it is that your passions lie, is the best way that I found to help identify where my place was within that world.
So what I'm hearing, ladies, is say yes to everything at first and then dwindle down from there. No, but really, it's about finding your strengths and your passions and seeing what you love and what you don't love, and then really focusing your energies on what you love. And for me, that was kind of what I struggled with. So when I started in engineering, I was 21 years old, freshly married, straight out of college, and I didn't know where to go. And I had a set path, and back then, a long time ago, it was one or the other for me. It was, okay, I'm gonna have my career until I have my kids, I'm gonna sit my butt at home, and then when they're old enough, maybe I'll go back. And then things didn't work out that way. I ended up getting divorced within 2 years. Just wasn't a happy marriage. So basically every single one of my plans was just completely blown up. So now what? What do I do? So now I had to refocus my energies, and I really focused on finding myself, finding what I loved, and looking within the corporate world, how can I then include that into my job? And it's pretty hard because I found out my passions were not necessarily technical related. I love the logic, I love the logistics and the strategy, and I love what I'm doing within my job as an engineer, but I didn't feel fulfilled. So I looked outside of my company, and then I looked within my company of how I can still do it. So I actually do a lot outside, but I also do a lot within Ford. I am heavily involved with the Diversity and Inclusion Office because that's something that's so special to me and so important. So for me, my goals within work are, I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing within engineering, and then who knows if I can move somewhere else within corporate world that lets me put my passions to use. So that's kind of what I try to do. So I think before we move on to next questions, I'm gonna open it up to you guys. Do you have anything for us? Oh, yes.
Hi.
Hold on, we'll get you the microphone. Thank you.
So I'm going to share with you my struggle and see if you have some useful advice. So I have an 11-month-old daughter, and so so I'm in that first year of motherhood. And I'm an attorney at General Motors. So before I had a kid, I was like super out there, like hardcore at work, on a ton of boards, like doing all the stuff I can. And when I came back, I was like, this is really hard. I'm just gonna focus on being a mom right now. I'm gonna go with it myself, and it'll get easier eventually. And so I think I struggle with, I don't have a hard time saying no and just being like, I'm just gonna pull back and take care of myself right now. But I guess I don't know, when is that becoming sort of like this, like, I wanna get back out there and do all these things, but I'm tired. And so like, how do you figure out when it's like, it's time that like, okay, you know, yes, you're tired, but you're going to be tired for a while. Like, did it get easier after that first year? Is one question I have. And do you still struggle with that, like, leading back into that, no, I'm just going to, like, I can take care of myself, you know? Like, does that keep you sometimes from pursuing that goal? And how did you deal with that?
Every single day. I am tired all the time. And I struggled so hard after motherhood because my plans didn't work out. So I didn't get remarried and I wasn't a mom until I was 31. And that wasn't my ideal picture. So for me, now building up this entire career and getting back into it, it's like, okay, how do I shift it? First and foremost, tired is your new norm. Until forever. Because being a mom never ends. It never ends. So when I'm at work, I'm thinking of my son. My son is now 3 years old. And I took an extended maternity leave, and that was during my maternity leave, that's when I really put everything into laser focus. That's when I got very heavily involved with my board, the AAWBC, because we all know our name is way too long. So I started joining the board, and within that, I said, okay, I needed an outlet for me, because it was work, and then it was mom, and there was no more Tahara. I lost myself. So I had spent all those years finding myself, and then the second I became a mom, I lost it. And I just didn't know what to do at that point. And I said, okay, I really need to find my passion, and I need to do something that has nothing to do with work and nothing to do with my family, although I love both. It's time for me. And I started doing Her Path to Success, which is a video series. That's a professional development series for women. And within that series, I found myself again. And it wasn't about me, it was about helping other women. And motherhood put everything into laser focus for me. And because my time was so limited, and because I was tired all the time, it's, okay, how can I steal a couple minutes here and a couple minutes there? After I put the kids to sleep, I'm a night owl, right? So I stay up at night. And that's when I work, and I just, whatever your creative outlet is, and whatever it is that might not even be tied to your job, but something that just makes you feel like yourself, do it. And if you're a morning person, get up early. It all depends, right? So you need to find the swing that's for you. And if you're gonna wait till you're not tired, it's never gonna happen. So just go for it. I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
That was amazing. I think it's hard. Yes, all of that. I think it's hard when you've been super involved in a lot of things before baby, and then it's either you're trying to, many people try to keep doing all of that and they're frustrated because they just can't, or they kind of go into more of that, not hibernation, but just sort of, I'm tired, like you said, you're tired. You know that you have to show up and go to work every day. It comes back down, I think, to that, with that idea of like finding a new focus, is reevaluating what your professional and personal goals are, and seeing what aligns with that. And if you look at your professional and personal goals, and I have a friend who's an attorney, and she's sort of mid-level in a firm, and she's like, that's where I want to be. I don't aspire to anything different than that. I don't want to be partner, I don't want to be these other things. This is what I want to be, this is what I want to do, but I really want to make sure that I'm giving time to civic organizations. And so she just made sure that that stuff was aligned. So I think it's going back to what are your goals, and what does it realistically take to get to those, and if it means board involvement or charities or other things outside the workplace, just start small. Don't go all in at the level, especially if it's somewhere you've been before, like, oh, welcome back, we saved this load of work for you. Just be like, I am just going to do this one event, or I'm just going to chair this one committee, and I'm going to do really well with it. And I'm going to make sure I'm getting out of it what I'm putting into it, and then you can build from there. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can slowly re-enter, feel your way into it, but first definitely start back with what are my goals? And that will help you choose which things to align yourself and which things not to align yourself with. that's helpful.
So just to piggyback off on that you said something that I think really resonated with me is not to feel less because your goals are maybe not as ambitious as another mom. And that's something that you're talking about mid-level, and that's what I did. You know, for the longest time, I didn't aspire to be a supervisor within engineering because there's a lot of bureaucracy, and then you have to deal with a lot of management, and it's a lot more workload. And then I really had to evaluate that for myself and say, is that something that I really want? And for the longest time, I beat myself up over it, thinking, I'm not ambitious enough. I'm not like this mom. She's a VP. She can do it. Or you talk to those VPs and they're like, well, I did this all, you know, I would share my struggles and say, I'm a mom, I want to do it. And then they would come back and say, well, I'm a mom also, and my husband and I lived in different cities, and I did this while I'm pregnant, and guess what, now I'm chief. Okay, make me feel, I mean, you put it in a certain way and you think, you know, and she's trying to do it in a way that she's genuinely trying to say, hey, I can do it, you can do it too, but it made me question myself. Is that even what I want? I mean, that's perfect for her, but it's not right for me. And I think I realized it's okay to strive for mediocrity within your career. It's okay.
Yes.
You get me.
I have had some mediocre years.
Yes.
It's okay. Like
It's
years,
fine.
like this year, we're just posting through, you know, doing the bare minimum, leaving at 4 o'clock, and then life goes on. And then there are years where I'm like, I'm gonna like, I need that bonus, guys. We're going to Italy, I need that bonus.
Right.
And then there are years where I'm like, oh, nothing is getting done.
And it's okay. It's okay. Define your own ambition. You know, we talk about defining success. Find what ambition means to you, and go for it. And don't let anyone tell you it's not enough. So I'm okay with not being a supervisor in the engineering field, in the corporate field, but I'm striving in a lot of other areas too that are more near and dear to my heart. So.
That was great.
Well, while we're on to you, something that I would love to know more about is, you know, as corporate moms, I know something that I'm always thinking about is how do we shift from corporate America to entrepreneurship? Because at the moment, I'm more philanthropic than entrepreneur. So how do we make that shift? How did you do it?
I hate to give a non-answer, but I think it totally depends on context. For me, one thing that I learned in my shift, and I'm still learning, is that preparation is key. So I was the primary breadwinner of my family for a long time. My husband and I got married. He was an entrepreneur. He was building his business from scratch. He's done a wonderful job. That meant for me that I had to take a lot of the load, and I was okay with that. For me, that was the season of life that I was in, and I was proud of that. I mean, that's a badge I wear with honor. But at the same time, that meant that for my personal goals, I did have to kind of step back on it, and I had to realign my expectations with my personal blog that, okay, I'm not going to post as much as other bloggers are, and I'm going to be that girl who posts like once or twice a month, and that's okay. It was kind of just keeping the lights on. And again, the realignment of goals and expectations was really key in that for me to feel okay with where I was at. Making the shift was an important kind of, I guess, adjustment of what those expectations were. So financially, we saved up a lot of money. We lived in a small Chicago apartment with 2 little kids. We drove beater cars. We really hustled and we saved, and then we moved back to Michigan, away from the very expensive big city, to have a lower cost of living, to be near family where we could get a little bit more help, and then we decided to dive in to an additional venture, which would be, that was what I ended up doing. So for us, it was kind of like planning, making sure that we weren't dropping balls, making sure between us, we looked at each other as a team and we had it covered kind of thing. And so now we're just really figuring out how to make it work. And even in that regard, I mean, we're renting our house right now. I'm 32 years old. I don't own a house. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with continuing to save, and I'm okay with the expectation that, hey, listen, we've taken a different path. I might not have as much in my 401k, but my goal one day is to get there, and we believe we are positioning ourselves for that. So I think, again, it's just realigning what those goals are. Where do you want to be in? Where do you want to be right now? Where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? And believing in yourself to see that long-term vision. Because diving into something like entrepreneurship is not a secure route. I mean, there's going to be a lot of doubts. I've been in my month of doing this. I've had a lot of doubts, and I've learned that there's some days where I've like had awesome meetings, or I've had a great email from a brand I want to work with. But then there's other days when there's crickets, and I'm like, my engagement is down. You know, it's like you have highs and you have lows, and I think the biggest thing is that you're learning through it, and that you're kind of optimizing accordingly based on where you're figuring out is working or not working. And in order to make that shift, I think you just have to have the expectation that you will learn, and that it's not going to be perfect, and it's going to be messy, and that's okay.
My husband started his business when he was 16, still the same business. He went to college and all those things. He still has days, and he's older than 16. For full disclosure, but he still has days where he's like, wait, why, what am I doing? Why is this? Should I just go get a job somewhere? So that's, I think, you should be comfortable, right, with that being a constant feature.
And entrepreneurship is completely different than corporate America, because at my job, when I clock out 4 or 5 o'clock, I'm done. I won't check emails unless there's an issue, which God forbid there isn't, but automotive, you never know. But entrepreneurship is like motherhood. It's 24/7. If you're owning your own business, you gotta put it all in. So, and it's not right or wrong, it's just whatever's right for you. So, we're gonna go ahead and open it up for a couple more questions. Please.
Just one back number.
Hi everyone. So my question relates to organization. So I have an 11-year-old daughter, a 10-month-old son. I manage business operations for 9 hospitals, so it's a huge team of people, emails, calls all the time. And I found that I've really been struggling with keeping all of that aligned and keeping it organized. Between work and home and bills and kids and daycare and sports for my daughter. My question is, what tools do you use to keep all these moving parts of your life somewhat together and organized?
It's very important. So I know a little bit about what you're talking about, because I have 2 stepdaughters as well that are with us during the week that are 12 and 10, and then my son is 3. So you probably have that balance of completely different age groups, so you have different activities within there. I know for me, the best thing I can tell you is I spend time every single night going over the next day of what I have to do, and I prioritize everything. So if you're asking for specific tools, I literally make lists and I will plot out everything that I have, because I have multiple projects and multiple aspects of my life. The kids, the home, my board, my personal stuff, all of that other thing. So what I end up doing is just prioritizing, and you have to realize that priorities are going to change daily. So I have my main priorities, and then within that I say, okay, do I have any appointments tomorrow? Do I have any meetings tomorrow? Do my kids have a field trip that day that I have to take a day off work? How can I reprioritize every single day what I need to do, and know some days I'm not going to see my kids until late, and then some days I'm not going to get any work done. So you have to balance it out that way and just change your mindset, and instead of being so overwhelmed by looking at the bigger picture, really breaking it down and into pieces. And if there is so much, put a big whiteboard calendar up and just literally go through and say, even tell your husband, this day I need you, or this day we have this, or whatever the case may be.
I love that. A little bit similar. I felt really overwhelmed with all the different pieces too, so I used this app for a week. It was called Toggle, Toggl. There's no E because, social media. That's tech. And it tracks your time, and it lets you sort of put in. So if it's almost like doing a time study in industry, right? If you're unsure of why you don't seem to have enough time, it's a really helpful tool. It was helpful for me to understand where I was when I was spending time. And then I created a system, it's called basically creating a flow. So I sit down on Sunday and I sort of time block out the week almost by energy rather than by specific tasks. So for instance, grocery shopping. Is this a family activity that you're gonna bring the kids with you and the little one is gonna help you like learn about vegetables, or is that like a getting shit done, getting through the grocery store as fast as possible thing, right?
Yeah.
You can decide which one it is and then place it into your week in a way that makes sense. So for me, grocery shopping is click list. On Friday, I start it. My husband has till Saturday to add stuff to it. The cart closes up Sunday morning. I go by myself to Kroger, 7 a.m. I have my Starbucks. I sit, they bring the groceries to my thing, right? So it's part of it is seeing what you actually have to do, so almost like just dumping out all the things that you have to do throughout a week, and then placing them into sort of a sample week, and doing that each Sunday. There's this really great book, it's called I Know How She Does It, by Laura Vanderkam, and she did a huge time study with all these female mom CEOs. She had them fill out time blogs, like by 5-minute increments, and they would send them to her, and they would be like, Laura, okay, so this one doesn't count though, because this week I had a birthday party, so it's ribbon off. Okay, this week doesn't count though, it's not my average week because I had 3 business trips I had to take. And she was like, the lesson is, there is no typical week. And if you try to say, this is my schedule for every single week, that may work for some people, and if it does, awesome. For me, it would fall apart, and I would get so mad and also feel lost, and then things would fall through the cracks. Having a flow and working it on Sundays is helpful for me. And then the other thing is, involving the kids and making sure they're sort of taking responsibility for themselves to a reasonable expectations-based extent. And so my son has like a little checklist, and he's really good. He's 6. He goes through it every morning. He makes sure his backpack is packed. And if he shows up to school without like a permission slip or something, just bring it the next day. I'm not going to run to school and drop it off because I just don't have time for that. So those are things that have been really helpful for me.
So we have one more question. Okay, and then we'll let you. So the last question is over here.
So my question is, I work and I also run a business for my 10-year-old daughter. She has her own business. But I'm looking to find the balance on corporate world and entrepreneurship, because then I'm going to be launching my own business in April. So how do you all juggle with corporate and running your business and being the super mom with kids who are involved in everything? She's involved in dance. I have a 3-year-old who's in T-ball. And so how do you juggle that?
I feel you. One thing that I found was super helpful was to take the time to, on Sundays, like literally map out your week and figure out where you can lean on other people too. Like, you know, if you have someone who can help drop off or pick up, things of that nature, that is super helpful. The other thing is, like, where are your free time slots? For me, it was after my girls went to bed, I would have, you know, I wanted to like spend some time with my husband, but I would also devote a half hour to an hour, 3 times a week. I tried to make it very realistic. It wasn't every single night, or else I wouldn't follow through. You know, it was a few nights a week, and I would block it out my time, and that was when I got things done for my business, for my blog on the side. And then weekends, like I would map things out, and I would involve them too. I would say, okay, we need to take photos on our way to, you know, the lakefront. Can we stop here? We'll quickly grab those, and then we'll be on our way. You know, I would try to combine things as much as possible. So I don't know what your specific business is, but if there are opportunity areas to kind of do 2 birds, 1 stone, I think that's a great way to optimize time. And like I said, too, just trying to think about your weeks as from like a hierarchy or from an overarching perspective, and where are those little blocks of time that you can do you and optimize, and really just like focus, put your phone away, don't do anything else but what you were there to do, and then you'll just hammer through things. And it takes a little bit of practice, but I think once you're kind of in the groove of it, you definitely you tend to just like hammer through things in smaller increments.
Thank you so much. And thank you, ladies, for taking the time today and making yourselves a priority today. So that's a step in the right direction. And just very quickly, how can these wonderful ladies find you if they want to get hold of you?
My email, if anyone wants to email me, is just emily@isn'tthatcharming.com. I also am always on Instagram. My Instagram handle is isn'tthatcharming. So direct message me, reach out to me. I'm happy to help however you guys might need.
Instagram @launchprofessor, all one word. And email is Karen@6.consulting. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And then my Instagram is Glass Ceiling Breakers. So @Glass Ceiling Breakers. Thank you, ladies.